slide? Okay.
Ah, there it is.
I just need to get another chair.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to talk to you. I know in many ways this is the graveyard shift, and I thank all of you for persevering with it. But I think it is important. I mean, the applications around broadband to health and education are significant. I'd like to comment just by way of a brief mention to the paper that has been produced for the Commerce Commission, and I think it's covered a lot of ground and covered it very well, so Ernie, thank you for that. But what I want to talk about today is not broadband. The one thing I would say about the paper is that it ignores one crucial thing, the world. And broadband is not just about New Zealand and what we do here, it's about our way of connecting to the rest of the world. And I don't think that we can do anything in this country without actually thinking about that in detail if we're really serious about being global operators and global players. So, I want to use a model that is called VUCA. VUCA was an acronym that was mentioned or designed by a number of Americans at the end of the Cold War. And the Cold War, of course, had made things fairly certain in terms of who hated whom and why they hated them and what they should do about it. And of course, once the walls fell down and all this sort of stuff, it threw the punters into total confusion. And a bunch of professors at Stanford University came up with this acronym. And VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that essentially is the world that apparently we've been thrust into over the last 15 to 20 years and is likely to be the world that we're operating in over the next wee while. And if you look at global, the global financial crisis, you look at the Arab Spring, you look at all of the other developments that are occurring in Europe, some of the uncertainties in the United States, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to kind of figure out that it's a little bit tricky in terms of what we might do in the future. So what do we do? Is it chaos or adaptation? I mean, how do we make sense of all of this sort of stuff? And I think that that's actually the challenge that we're all faced with. I think I'd ask you to put aside broadband or anything else at the moment, and actually broadband is about the doing, it's not about the thinking. And I think what people like you and we ought to be doing is the thinking around what we want our future to look like and what shape it might take. And let's just assume that despite Stephen Fry's efforts, that broadband will kind of be there and other means of technology will be there to do what we need it to do. What we have to decide is the world we want to create and why we want it to look like it should be. So we've got some choices. It's a favourite slide of mine, actually. And I think it epitomises fairly well some of I look at the three people, I think there's three people on those bikes and think, what on earth do they make of the situation they're in? But no doubt they got to the other end somehow. Here are some of the challenges that we face in education, and I suspect in health as well. It's a bit of a list. Globalisation, uncertainty around finance, demands for material, increasing tension between environmental concerns, increasing tension between the Christian West and the Islamic nations. Given the fact that my organisation spends a great deal of time working in the Middle East, that is a significant one. Rich and poor disparity, equity of access, the increasing influence and power of Asia, and so it goes on. Interestingly, in New Zealand, the tension between public and private delivery of education, which is almost always fought out on ridiculous ideological lines rather than any kind of evidence at all. And the distinct character between the notion of creating citizens of national character, but also those who are citizens of the world. Those are the challenges that we face. And you overlay those across the notion that we're operating in environments that are volatile and uncertain and so forth. And what on earth do we make of all of this? And more importantly, what are the differences that we make of it as compared to our fellow citizens of the world who might live in Asia or Africa or the Pacific or wherever? Now that's the challenge that broadband has to offer. That's the challenge that IT and communication has to offer. And while we can get bogged down in technical details about that, my view is leave that to the people that know about that stuff. And as I said before, let's get on to the thinking. So, Here we go. Nothing has happened. Here we are. So, making sense of VUCA. If we are going to do that, then it seems to me we've got to turn the equation round, or at least get it to equal 0 at the other end. So, perhaps what we need to be looking for are some issues around vision. What is it that we're going to be trying to create? Understanding of each other. It seems to me the biggest challenge we have in the world is actually to know the aspirations of each other as citizens, of members and communities within this planet, and how we actually might get along together and make the best and most of each other, as opposed to the kind of suspicion, the hatred, and the general destructiveness that goes on at the moment. And it seems to me that one of the ways of doing that is the notion of connectedness, and the notion of actually allowing our kids and our young people and our adults to be able to connect to people in other parts of the world and get to know them, as opposed to just sort of, not being sure. Right? If the button will work, I'm on the last. It doesn't work. Here we are. So here we go. Greater understanding of each other, connectedness and access. Those are the challenges, in my view, that we have. And those are the challenges that we have to meet. As an educator, how about this as an experiment for New Zealand, setting up a global classroom as a model and a trial, having kids from 4 different countries involved in that classroom, having teachers from 4 different countries involved in it, and actually trying to measure the results of that in terms of the attitudes, the behaviour, and the achievement and well-being of the young people there. And I'll stop. There we are. So let's get the letters in the right order. Thanks.
Thank you very much, John.